So get this, y'all. A white man disguised himself as a black man to learn about racism. Yep, you heard that right. A Canadian man who happens to be white decided to disguise himself as a black man, travel the United States of America, write a book about it, and then self-proclaimed it as the most important book on American race relations ever written. Yes, he did that. If you don't know who I am, my name is Andrea, the word engineer, a former engineer turned freelance book editor living in Mexico. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to share this article by newsone because the article was quite hilarious. Okay, so in this newsone article written by Zach Lindley, let's get right into it. White journalist gets dragged for disguising himself as a black man for a book about racism. Sam Forster is only the latest white author to enter the literary world of white authors, white-splaining anti-black racism to a presumably white readership. Late last year, a white author, Kate Curran, who had landed a lucrative book deal with a major publisher, flushed her literary career down the proverbial toilet because her racism and insecurity led her to create a fake account on Goodreads and review bomb competing books by authors of color, particularly black women authors. When her identity was discovered and outed by internet sleuths, because the internet do be having those sleuths, she tried to cover herself by conjuring up a fake friend to blame the scandal on, and even created a fake text thread with said fake friend. Whoa. I had heard about this incident, but I didn't know how deep the scandal went. Many of us have heard of Coran's story and thought her actions must have represented the most egregious, racist, ridiculous, and whitest things a Caucasian author could do in the literary world within the last couple of years. Well, that might have changed now that a Canadian American journalist has announced his book chronicling his experience traveling the US disguised as a black man in order to give us his take on racism in America. In other words, a white man set out on a mission to prove racism still exists by wearing blackface. The irony of it all. Meet Sam Forrester. He's a Montreal-based journalist who, according to Complex, has described his book, Seven Soldiers, Taxonomizing Racism in Modern America as the most important book on American race relations that has ever been written. Whew, the nerve. It was in this context that Forrester posted on X, formerly Twitter. Last summer, I disguised myself as a black man. I traveled throughout the US to document how racism persists in American society. Writing Seven Soldiers was one of the hardest things I've ever done as a journalist. It's out May 30th. There's the cover, if you haven't seen it. Now, it's entirely possible that Forrester is just a troll. He wouldn't be the first white person to get on board and start gaslighting black people just for his own amusement, after all. And it doesn't appear that his book of flagrant caucasity It does appear that his book of fragrant caucasity is self-published, so it's not like he was taken seriously by a literary agent or publisher. Still, let's proceed as if this white man is dead serious about being the Milli Vanilli of Miss Millies, and that his white savior complex is so inflated that he truly believes wearing blackface for one summer gave him the necessary insight to write the most important book on American race relations that has ever been written. First of all, this has already been done, and it was pretty stupid the first time. In 1961, John Howard Griffin, a white man, authored Black Like Me, which recounted his experience wearing blackface and pretending to be black in the Jim Crow South. Civil rights organizer Stokely Carmichael notably called the literary offering an excellent book for whites. Many decades later, in 2006, Ice Cube produced a reality TV show called Black White. In the show, a black family was disguised as white, and a white family was disguised as black. There were moments in the show where the Caucasian disguised black people found out how white people talk about us when they don't think we're in the room, which is fairly predictable. But the truly white family didn't appear to experience as much racism. And if I had to guess why, I'd say it's because they were still white AF. All the producers really did was put brown makeup on their faces and make their hair kind of, sort of, but not really look like a black person's hair. So they still sounded white, were lipless like white people, and just had a Caucasian aura about themselves that would likely disarm even the right white racists who actually believed they were black. Anyway, it was a dumb experiment then, which is likely why the show only had one season and was virtually forgotten about shortly after it ended. I didn't even remember the show existed. I feel like I vaguely remember it, but not really. Needless to say, there are around 40 million black people in America and multiple generations of black authors who can tell and have told far more important stories about racism than an ignorant white man who had to become the real-life version of Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Tropic Thunder to write his Little Colonizers for Civil Rights book. So, instead of continuing to pontificate on Forrester's right nonsense, let's just enjoy watching him get mercilessly dragged across the interwebs over his book and the story behind it. That was a very well written article and freaking hilarious. So, if I'm not mistaken, the first article written about this was on Complex. So I have a Complex article pulled up for you guys now. Similar to the topic before, Twitter obliterates white writer who disguised himself as a black man for chronicling racism in America, and is the person who deemed this the most important book on American race relations that has ever been written. Whew. Okay. A Canadian white journalist is getting roasted on social media over the angle of his new book. He didn't provide any additional information about this so-called disguise. Now, I haven't seen the disguise myself. I'm not sure if those pictures or images have been produced on the interwebs yet, but I'm curious to see what he looked like. So, with no listed publisher, it's quite possible Forster is assigning this level of ultimate importance to his own work, as was mentioned in the previous article. So, let's take a look at some of these X post, formerly Twitter post, see what the people are saying. So in one user writes, instead of buying this book from a white author who traveled the country in blackface, read and listen to actual black people about our lived experience. Profiting off of blackface and racism is nasty work. Okay, another user writes, you had to do blackface to understand the issues black people face? Serious question though. That's a serious question. Okay, another ex-user writes, a Canadian white man cosplays in blackface for a summer instead of just interviewing black people about their lived experiences. To then to then write a book about your cosplay experience and claim it to be the most important book on race relations is true colonizer behavior. Facts. Another ex-user writes, the fact that you felt the need to center yourself in the black experience by literally traveling around in blackface shows you lack character, empathy, and depth. You could have easily just believed black people about their own experiences. This is deranged. Seriously though, like in your circle of friends, in all of your circle of friends, no one told you that this wasn't a good idea? I don't know, my guy. You might need some new friends. Another ex user writes, as if just listening to black people about our experiences wasn't sufficient. You had to do this wild experiment to prove the existence of racism. Another user writes, I want to see the disguise, you and me both. Another ex user writes, you're a journalist. You could have just interviewed some black Americans. This is wild, especially considering some other white dude already did this, and there's no way your book is the most important book ever written on race relations. That's a comical statement. Highly. Very. Now, someone posted the Drake image. I obtained a pic of a Canadian journalist, Sam Forster, disguised as a black man for his forthcoming book, Seven Soldiers. Whew. Okay, another so this is S.A. Crosby. If you don't know who S.A. Crosby is, we'll check him out in a minute. So, oh, get the F out of here. Did it ever occur to you to maybe, I don't know, talk to black people? So if you don't know who S.A. Crosby is, he's an Anthony Award-winning writer from southeastern Virginia. He is the author of the New York Times bestseller Razorblade Tears and Backtop Wasteland, which won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, was a New York Times notable book, and was named a Best Book of the Year by NPR, The Guardian, and Library Journal, among others. When not writing, he's an avid hiker and chess player. If you've ever looked by S.A. Crosby, which admittedly I haven't, but he's been on my list of authors to check out for a while now. And this may just be the push for me to check out one of his novels. So if you haven't read him, make sure you do. So you already know we had to go to Amazon and see what the book is talking about. So despite it having a 1.5-star rating, it is the number one release in Black and African American history. The irony of it all. So let's get into these reviews, because the reviews are where the fun is at. So one reviewer writes, "This is not just bad, it's offensive. This guy bought an Afro wig at a costume shop and put on dark foundation to pretend to be black to see how that went. He was surprised when it didn't go well. I'm so confused as to why a white man thinks he has some unique take on blackness. So much so, it was worth writing a book over. It was not. Why read this absolute garbage when you can listen to black people when they tell you that all is not copacetic? I'll be honest. I got through about a third of it. Even if the content was okay, the writing was bad. Really bad. It reads like someone broke out the thesaurus and found words that almost mean the same thing, but not quite. I couldn't do it. It's a wholly offensive book, barely readable and trash. Don't waste your time." Another reviewer writes, "A white man in blackface is not the way to learn about racism in America." Exactly, like, sir, who are your friends? Who are your friends? Because why did no one tell you this was not a good idea? It is not groundbreaking, and it is not daring. It's offensive and gross. Black people in America tell us every day about racism in this country. Listen to black people. Believe black people. Another another reviewer said, right, disrespectful, sectarianism, dangerous, churlish, arrogant, and a mockery of my community. Hold on, because I need to look up what churlish means. Give me a moment, please. Let me holler at my girl Miriam. Let's see. What does churlish mean? Ah, vulgar. Hey, am I pronouncing it right? Okay,
Churlish.
okay. Of or resembling a churl, vulgar, marked by a lack of civility or graciousness, difficult to work with or deal with. All right. So one person says, "Great writing, great, good book." Must be a friend of his. Another reviewer says, "I thought this was a satire at first, and then I realized somebody actually did this and claims that he was daring. I wake up, a minority already in America every day. Whew, am I daring for that?" So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your perspective on what you think about a white man dressing up as a black man, traveling throughout the US, writing a book about it, and writing a book about it. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out one of my previous videos. I'll link it at the top of the screen somewhere. And I'll see you guys in the next video.